So good morning, everybody, and welcome to brand new 2020 Chat Show, a chat show for small business owners and creative entrepreneurs to help you build your brand, boost your business, and grow your audience. I'm Olivia, and today we're going to be talking about podcasts and how podcasting can really help grow your business. So if you've ever considered doing a podcasting for your business, or maybe you're already podcasting for your business, you may have wondered, is this all worth it? Is the time and resources to invest in podcasting, is it worth it for my business? So today I've invited the wonderful Anna Parker-Naples on the show, the podcast queen. Anna hosts her number one international podcast called The Entrepreneurs Get Visible. And it's number one on iTunes. She's also a number one best-selling author on Amazon. She's a multi-award winning audio expert and also a business and mindset coach. So it's really wonderful to have you on the show, Anna. Welcome.
Hey, it's great to be here, Olivia. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. I'm really quite excited to get going with all these questions. I've got lots of questions to ask you, but a brand new 2020 chat show. We obviously love to welcome guests and to share, and to discuss a specific topic, but we also like to hear some quite inspiring story. And I believe yours is quite inspiring. You started your career as an actress, but I think your life took an unexpected turn. Do you mind sharing with our audience a little bit about your story? How you bounced back?
I 10 years ago was told to expect that I'd never walk again as a result of a complication in pregnancy. And I discovered at that point NLP and mindset work, which totally changed my life. And not only did I go on to recover, but it also gave me the courage to think, well, how could I be a world-known performer and be a stay-at-home mum for my children and earn the kind of money that I wanted to? And that's really when I found the world of voice and audio and went on to become a multi-award-winning Hollywood voice actor. Wow. Which then it's kind of grown from there. And now what I do is I help entrepreneurs to get their podcasts out there with powerful launches, teaching them that really what matters is that your message reaches the right people, that you're seen by the right people.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's quite an amazing story, and well done for bouncing back. It kind of shows how powerful we can be as human beings if we really want to.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, to bounce back. So obviously today you've got your business, Anna Parker-Naples, and you've obviously got your podcast. Can I ask you what do you get out of podcasting, and what's your sort of primary driver for doing podcasts?
The podcast is the core of my business. It's the main lead generation tool. It also is a massive credibility and kudos stamp. If you have a show that works well for your target audience, even if people don't listen to the show, they know you have a show. It just helps you raise the bar in the way that previously I think only being an author could do. And I think actually that this goes one step beyond, because there are only just 1 million podcasts. And I say that, and I know it sounds a lot, but when you compare that to 610 million blogs worldwide and 31 million YouTube channels, actually you can still really carve your mark in the podcasting space at a time when more and more people are coming to the podcast platforms to listen.
Yeah. I mean, obviously podcasting, there's many ways that we can use podcasting, and podcasting, from what I hear, kind of came to the forefront. It's been going for years, like you said, but it's came to the forefront 4 or 5 years ago. But even, more recently, small businesses are using it as a platform for their business. Why do you think all of a sudden, do you agree with that? And why is it that all of a sudden?
Well, the reason is because generally they're hosted by one person who is an expert in their own field, particularly when we're talking about business podcasts, that the audio is kind of special in that the way we consume audio, it's quite an intimate experience. We're going about our daily lives. We haven't had to pause everything else to sit and watch a video. We're running, we're in the shower, we're getting dressed. It goes with us as we're doing the washing up or the ironing or the hoovering. And so there's just much more of an emotional connection to the host. And what has happened, and the reason podcasting is now developing at such an astonishing rate, is because in a recent study of podcast listeners, it was showed that over 2/3 of listeners were taking action to purchase as a result of recommendations made in podcasts. And that figure is way higher than any other advertising medium. Yeah. And so everyone wants a piece of that pie.
Yeah, for sure. And obviously with this new podcasting world, it's a great way to reach a wider audience. But I guess maybe the first question I'd like to ask is, is podcasting for me? What kind of business should podcast or can podcast? Can every business podcast?
Any business where you as a personal brand want to catapult your growth is possible as a podcast. So if you have any aspirations to be an author, is in the expert or non-fiction space, if you have any aspirations to be a speaker, then, or an influencer of any kind, then a podcast is for you. If you want to be a market leader or have aspirations to become a market leader in whatever it is you do, then you need a podcast. More and more people are turning to podcasts to consume education, entertainment, knowledge, and connection. And we are just seeing astonishing numbers of listener growth, which was due to accelerate this year anyway. But with lockdown, with COVID-19, the figures have just grown astonishingly.
Yeah. I mean, you've just told us some of the key benefits of doing a podcast. But let's talk about really in a bit more detail about growing your audience. How can a podcast help you grow an audience for your business?
So to start with, if your show is created correctly in the first place, and there are lots of mistakes that podcasters can make in the early stages, then if you get your launch right and you get the wording right and the description right and all the things that happen behind the scenes in a podcast, if you get those things right, then places like iTunes and Spotify are going to promote your show for you. If you get those right, you'll be able to get into the charts, you'll be able to get into the new show categories. If you do that, and lots of them people are then who you don't know, who are outside your audience, if iTunes or Spotify is then saying listen to this show, well, you're going to get more eyes on you. And if people like your intro, they like your style, they like the quality of your audio, they like your message, well, that know, like, and trust factor is built in a much quicker way through a podcast than any other medium. Right. And, in your own show, not only are you building that know, like, and trust, but you can position your own products, services, your own lead magnets. Yeah. You can bring people into your communities. And people feel like they want to belong there because of that relationship that they've built with the host.
Okay, so that's definitely a super positive thing for your business. And another obviously massive key benefits to podcasting is to generate income. I think when we think about income for podcasts, we might straight away think about sponsors, advertising, affiliation. Can you just explain what the difference between the three types of monetizing your podcast?
I think there's more than three, actually. So I would say that you can either go for sponsorship, which is CPM, that's often known as, where traditionally you go out to some other company who wants to get in front of your company and they pay you a fee. There are industry standards, but again, you can package up your own custom deals. You don't have to have tens of thousands of listeners in order to approach a company if you've got a good offer for them. There's also CPA, which is cost per acquisition, which is effectively like going into an affiliate relationship with somebody else or using someone else's affiliate products and promoting them strategically throughout your show. Or there's really then promoting your own products and services or your own offers, which could be through, sharing your lead magnets, which could be through actually talking about your mastermind or your coaching or your programs. But also it could be that you have a membership model using a platform such as Patreon, where you're asking for subscriptions for extra content. And there's loads of different ways that people monetize their podcasts. And it's not always as obvious as having a sponsor on the show. That's not always the best route for a podcaster.
Yeah, because I was going to say, I mean, for any newcomers to the game or any new business who want to maybe venture into it, the idea of sponsors, you think, oh my God, I need 100,000 listeners before anybody's going to sponsor me. So there has to be, like you said, more subtle ways that you can then generate, maybe, by pushing people into your website to buy your products. I mean, can you maybe, you have to be careful when you start selling your own products so you don't become a podcast that's a bit sort of sales pushy.
This is it.
Where's the subtleness?
What's the best way for us to show we have expertise in something? It's to give out our value for free. It's to demonstrate we know what we're talking about and to be reminding people of that. And I think, there are skills and there are ways to do it, which is something that I help people with inside the podcast membership, making sure that it doesn't put people off? How do you do that so that it's in your own voice, so that it doesn't feel like now we're having a radio commercial break? How do you do it so that it's part of the show and that it's seamless? That is part of the skill of podcasting, actually. And I think that becoming au fait, becoming comfortable with that is actually a really important step before going to a sponsor. So I do encourage people to wait a little bit so that they are a much more confident podcaster and a much more confident marketeer before they approach a sponsor.
Yeah, of course, that totally makes sense. And I mean, so you talked earlier on about some of the mistakes that you see. So what is some of the common mistakes that people do when they create their own podcast or launch their own podcast?
So creating a podcast with a quirky name that has nothing to do, that no one else is going to understand, or putting their own name as the title when they don't have a big enough audience to warrant that. No one's going to go looking for that podcast. Not making their description clear enough with the right keywords in it. Not tagging their podcast appropriately behind the scenes. That's something that happens before you upload your audio. Poor artwork. Not having artwork that actually would speak to the ideal listener. And then quality, an intro that puts people off. Either it's too long, too rambly, or it's not clear. It doesn't give that first-time listener an immediate understanding of what they're going to get and why they should stay. And the part of that then with the introduction of your podcast is, does it tell them why they should be there? Does it get them excited to stay? And also, is the quality good enough that they're not going to switch off?
Yeah.
And I think when you work towards getting those things sorted, then you've got the foundations of a strong show.
Yeah. Can you launch a show without 0 followers? Or do you need to first build your mailing list first?
I think they can go hand in hand. Obviously, if you already have a mailing list, then that's going to help you. But I'm a big believer that you're better to start and get better later.
Okay.
What's powerful about podcasts, and this is one of the areas I didn't quite get to answer earlier when we were talking about how it works for your business, is that podcast directories such as iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, and Google, particularly Google Podcasts, are actually like powerful search engines in themselves. So once you have your podcast in there, then people can find you if you've got the right keywords in there. So like, for example, my show Entrepreneurs Get Visible, I'm very particular about who I want to listen to that show, and it's in the title. It tells you it's for you.
Yeah.
So, you get the conception of your podcast right, and you are halfway there.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I was going to say, you mentioned also earlier on that there's over 1 million podcasts out there. So, I mean, how do you stand out? Is it purely, again, by the content of your podcast that's going to make you stand out? Or is it because of a better sort of marketing strategy behind it?
So it's a combination of everything. First of all, you've got to have a powerful launch. If you don't make the most of that launch strategy right at the beginning, then you've missed a trick, really. Although you can boost a podcast that's already established, you'll always get better results in terms of hitting the charts when you first release, which is why I'm really keen. Well, that's why I share a lot of launch strategy inside my work. But on the other hand, you are able to grow your podcast because you are putting out good content, and people talk about good content. People tend to really share podcasts in a way that they're not sharing YouTube videos. People will say, oh, you should listen to this one. And it's because they feel so connected to it. So again, it's learning techniques about how connected your guests, your listeners feel with you. It's also bringing on great guests who are going to share the episode with their audience, even if they only tweet about it once or put it on their Instagram story once. It's enough for you to reach their audience. So everything you do with a podcast can be really strategic to build your business and build your own credibility.
Yeah. And then obviously there's how you're going to promote your own show. So social media is obviously quite a key important part to advertise your show. Are you on every single platform, or do you have platforms?
I'm on every platform except TikTok. That's not really spoken to me yet. No. I'm not really the dancing type, but I have a presence on every one of those. I have platforms that I prefer. I much prefer LinkedIn and Facebook to Instagram or Twitter, but I think you do have to have a presence everywhere because you're a business. So why wouldn't you?
Yeah, Yeah, absolutely. And so what about statistics and matrix? I mean, if your podcast is going to be on various different platforms, iTunes, Spotify, and so on, plus your own website, is it easy to analyze all this data for your show, or could that be quite a bit of a challenge?
No, it depends on your host so in order to get onto all of those platforms, you have to have hosted your podcast in one particular place. And the one that I tend to use is Libsyn because I like the advanced data that it gives. Now, there are some limitations in podcasts as to how much data we can really see because it's based on downloads rather than listens.
Right.
So Spotify are actually moving towards being able to identify exactly the demographic of the people who are streaming because of information that they hold, and that information will be coming out to people more and more. So there are different ways that you can look, but on the whole, you go to your podcast host, and depending on what level of support you pay for, you would be able to see how many countries you're listened to, what devices listened to you. You wouldn't know the exact listener, but it can be quite detailed as to who's listening.
Yeah. What's important for you as a matrix? Is it the number of downloads, or how long are people staying on your show? What's one of the most important measures that you
I like to know that my listenership is growing, and I look not only at which episodes have really hit, so what, and that's usually about what title it was to draw them in. Okay. That's very important, but also what didn't go so well, which episode have I not got so many hits, and why has that happened? So haven't I got the title right? Did I not do the promotion right that week? Was I missing something? Because that's how you're going to learn and you're going to grow, and vice versa. So it might be that on that particular show I didn't ask people to share it with one person. That's something I very often talk about. Share it with someone who needs to hear this. And you'd be surprised when you give a clear, direct call to action, the difference that makes to listener behavior. In terms of how long people listen to an episode, now I have two styles of format on my show. I have interviews that are about 30 to 35 minutes long, sometimes less, and then I have short episodes that are around 8 to 10 minutes long. Okay. And it's interesting watching because they're quite different, watching how long people listen for. Now, when you look on average, people drop off on video at about the 25% mark. You're lucky if people get past that mark on video. But on podcasts, 80% of people listen to 80% of your content, which is really, really strong. And actually, it goes up higher than that. Most people are listening to at least 96%. So that's why you've got to really think, like, if you are going to promote your own products and services, you don't want to do that right at the end because people aren't going to be listening. Okay. So you've got to think about those things from a business perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. So much to think about. And let's talk about branding a little bit. I mean, that could be, if you're starting out and you want to create your own podcast, branding it could be quite an exciting journey. Anything from looking at for the name, the look and feel of the logo, the presentation of your own website and how you're going to present your show. There's quite a lot to think about when it comes to branding. What's your piece of advice? Can you give our audience, or is there any sort of no, don't do that when it comes to branding?
So less is more.
Less is more.
Absolutely, less is more. You want something that stands out. You want to do your research. What are your competitors doing, and why are they doing it? Are there colours that they tend to use, and what colour might be a strong contrast to them? So you kind of want to look like you fit, but how do you stand out at the same time? Less text. People always want to have this on there or that on there. No one can read it when it's tiny. So the less text, the better. And clarity about who it's for. It's got to speak to the ideal client. So there's so much research that needs to go on. And you could decide today you were going to have a podcast and it'd be up within 48 hours, but you'd be missing so much research and you'd be missing so much launch opportunity.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the launching as well. I mean, how can one make a really impactful launch?
You've got to take people on the journey with you. So right from when you say I'm thinking about a podcast, tell people, get their feedback, even if you know what you're going to call it. Run a poll. Do you like this or this? What speaks to you? Do you like this artwork or do you like this one? Because then people are going to feel that they are involved in the planning. Ask them, who would you love to have on my show? What podcast do you listen to that I should get inspiration from? So that by the time you reach your show, they've already bought into the fact that they want to know it and they want to hear it. It really makes a very big difference.
Yeah, for sure. And should you be on you talked about all the different platforms, so it's best for us to just be on every single platform to get the bigger reach. Yeah.
And a host like Libsyn would allow you to connect. It automatically pushes the content out once you've connected it. Yeah.
And is iTunes and Spotify, they're quite picky of who they let in, or can anybody be on the...
iTunes and Spotify aren't picky. Anyone can be let in as long as they meet their quality standards. So that would be in terms of the artwork and in terms of the audio quality. In terms of content, they'll let anything goes as long as you mark it, whether it's explicit or not. But some of the other apps, such as Stitcher and it's gone from my mind, but some of the others are pickier. And we will actually, I think in the next 12 months, see there being a lot more barriers to cross to entry. But at the moment, anyone can podcast.
Okay. And let's quickly talk, because I think that could be a whole new chat show together, but let's quickly talk about equipment. What is it that you need to start a podcast? If you don't have a lot of budget, you just want to get going, what's the essential equipment that you need to get?
So the real essential is to have a microphone and some headphones or some earbuds. That would be the absolute basics. Now, there are so many different microphones. In fact, in this video, you can see I've actually got two here in front of me. Now, this one here is a USB microphone, which means I can just plug it straight into my laptop. And that is enough for a podcaster. Okay. I always recommend people wear headphones or earbuds. And the reason is, if you're interviewing someone down the line, such as Zoom or something like that, then it stops any interference. It also means while you're recording that you'll hear all sorts of anomalies in your speech and the other person's recording environment that you wouldn't be aware of with your naked ear. So things like if your mouth goes sticky because you need to have a drink, that can affect your audio. Things like if there's some rubbish truck up the street, wherever your interviewee is sitting, you'll be able to hear it before they will because of the quality of your headphones. So, and then of course for editing, headphones are absolutely essential, good quality headphones. And then the final piece really is to have a pop shield, which I've actually on this one, this has got a foam cover on it. And normally a pop shield has, it's like a ring that sits in front. This particular microphone has one built into it, but it stops any what we say plosives. So when we say P's and B's, we release pockets of air and sometimes a bit of spittle. Nice. And the pop shield really protects the audio from being distorted, which could mean it isn't usable, and also gives longer life to your microphone. So they're the three pieces of equipment that you really need. Okay.
And I can see from your room, are you in the sort of soundproof? Have you made your room soundproof?
I am, because I have a massive background in audio. So I've worked for nearly 15 years as an audio expert and a voiceover artist. And so we had this room that was kind of part of my journey. This was the only room in the house that fitted my wheelchair all those years ago. You don't need this. Obviously, I have it, so why wouldn't I use it?
Sure.
But you don't need this. But you do need to be aware of having a quieter space with softer furnishings around you, or blankets, duvets, that kind of thing, so that you've not got loads of hard surfaces, so that the sound can't bounce around quite so much. Often recording in the corner of a room is better than in the middle of a big room. Recording in a carpeted space or somewhere with a rug on the floor is better than a polished wooden floor. And it's things like that make a difference.
Yeah, for sure. And so what about editing? I mean, that's probably maybe one side that could be quite daunting. Obviously there's lots of different softwares out there, but if you're a beginner, what would you advise?
So what I would say is that the the software for editing can look a little bit scary, but I didn't come into audio because I loved audio. I came into audio because I was interested in getting my voice out there. And so I learned everything from scratch, and went to a very, very high level. In fact, I used to talk internationally about audio. And I'm a big believer that there's a lot of jargon out there that's really unnecessary. So what I teach people is what you need to know to be good enough and how you can find out more if you want to.
Yeah.
I would say if you know how to highlight, copy and paste in a Word document, then you can learn to edit fairly quickly.
Okay.
And it's as simple as that. So I'm very passionate about giving people really step-by-step processes that are easy to understand and empowering people to get it done that's good enough.
Yeah.
Obviously, you know, for whatever content we put out there, you've got to think, well, what quality of production do I want to have? And this goes for video. You could either have lots of live video or you could have things that are pre-recorded. You've got to think, what's the impression I want to create? And if you know that getting your messages out there is more important than being perfect, then get your podcast started. If you know you have the budget for an audio team to work on it for you, a podcast production agency to work on it for you, then absolutely do that. But the most important thing is to get your message out there and get started.
Yeah. So what we see as well today quite a lot for podcasts is they're now moving to podcast and video. Do you do that for your business? Do you use video?
Yeah.
You record your podcasts on video?
Some. I mostly record interviews like this on Zoom, and I don't use these videos on YouTube at the moment. Some of them may be cut up and used as snippets as opposed to the whole show going up that way. But I use them in promotion. I use the video in promotion mostly. And then the full content is audio only.
Yeah. Well, let's talk quickly about macro contenting. You just made me thought about it. So if how can we macro content a podcast?
Do you mean like repurposing?
Yeah, repurposing, yeah.
So quite often what I'll do, if I know that I need to create a podcast episode and I need to do a Facebook Live to teach people something, I would do a Facebook Live I would do it on my phone, and I would use a clip-on microphone, a good quality clip-on microphone like this.
Okay.
And as I do the live, so this goes straight into my phone. It needs an adapter, but it does go straight in. I would do my live on my phone as I would normally. And then I would not interact necessarily with the audience, because I'd be delivering content. And so if I was going to interact with the audience, I would deliver the content piece first. So then I know once that's finished, I can download that. I can take the audio, just the audio from that video, and I can put it into my software. And then it can be made into a podcast episode. So from there, that then becomes show notes for my website, which gives me much more longevity in terms of search engine optimization. We then create graphics. So we'll create graphics for social media about that particular episode, but we'll also pull out quotes, which then obviously go on my Instagram. So through doing, 1 8 to 10 minute Facebook Live, because I'm podcasting, I am then hitting so many more places with it.
Sure.
And so I think it's actually a very
So obviously you've got your own program, like a big membership program that you run. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what that program is?
Yeah, so I run the podcast membership because I had my first podcast. I didn't understand any of this stuff. I didn't understand how to launch. I didn't understand what would make a difference, but I knew I had the audio expertise. So I sat for a long time thinking, well, what's working and what isn't? And I basically went back to the drawing board, and for my second podcast I decided if I'm going to teach people about the audio, I want to make sure that I have an indisputably successful show. And as I launched that, I then decided that instead of having a high-end course, I wanted to make it as accessible as possible. So the podcast membership, we have a section that is all about planning and launching your podcast, then about how to grow your podcast once it's launched, then about how to monetize, and also how to be a great guest, because there are ways to monetize that for yourself.
Yeah, fantastic. And obviously we'll give out all the details of your websites and so on the show. But thank you very much, Anna. That was a great it's gone really quickly, but
yeah. Well, thank
then,
you for having me. And if anyone, I have a launch checklist which might be of use to anybody listening,
okay.
which is at annaparkernaples.co.uk/podcast checklist. And it takes you through all the steps we've talked about today: how to host it, how to record it, how to edit it, and how to promote it. So go grab that if you'd like a bit more information.
Yes. Thank you, Anna. That was fantastic.
Yeah, great.
And,
thank you for having me, Olivia.
Thank you. And to all our viewers, I know hopefully that's giving you a good idea of what you can do and the power of podcasts and how you can not only help grow your audience, but bring further income into your business and just grow your brand and have fun with it. It sounds like it's actually quite a fun thing to do. You get to invite lots of wonderful guests. You get to learn lots of new information, and you get to educate your ideal clients. So the question is it time for you guys to implement podcasting into your business? So make sure you join me next Monday again at 4:00, and also keep subscribing to our YouTube channel. Come into the group if you need help with your branding. My lovely co-host Tam, is there to help you in the Creative Hub. Thanks, guys. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next Monday. And don't forget, be visible. Bye for now.